One interview question every CDMO should use.
Talent is not something we buy. It is something we build. Audits are no longer episodic. It's really a continuous process.
I noticed that lots of quality people don't make it through the first 90 days.
The first 90 days are really important.
Welcome to Medtech Movers and Shakers, the industry podcast about the medtech industry. It's a show where we sit down with industry leaders from operations as well from academia and anybody who shakes and shapes the industry. And from now on, you will see this show bi-weekly. So far, we have done it kind of irregularly, but I will host the show now every 2 weeks, and I hope that many of you like it and will sign in. Today, our first guest is Henrik Brabrand. Henrik is CEO of Albright Partners and co-CEO of CDMO Partners, a partnership which he and I founded a while ago. We've also been knowing each other since a couple of years, working with each other since a couple of years. And Henrik is also head of the several boards of medtech search, not only medtech, but search organizations and associations. And I'm very happy that Henrik is our guest today.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah. And just for those of you who know me, I'm Carsten Wortmann. I'm CEO of CW Global Partners, an executive search boutique, and also co-CEO of CDMO Partners, obviously together with Henrik. Today, we would like to talk about the talent constraint in CDMOs. Today, everybody says that talent is a constraint, but that's very vague. Today, we would like to get more specific, which roles actually bottleneck the CDMOs, what grade looks in those roles, and how hire and onboard in a way that protects quality and delivery can be done in an effective way. So, Henrik, when you hear CDMO talent crunch, what's the one thing most leaders misunderstand?
I think what I sort of, I think the foundation of a talent crunch is that there's sort of perception that talent is a constraint. So there's an issue getting the right talent. And I think one of the misperceptions I think that I often experience is that people often treat it as it's about a headcount shortage problem. Rather than actually being a capability and system problem, I think. Because at the end of the day, it's a lot about looking at what capabilities you need. And that's where you need to sort of take your focus rather than just looking at it as a headcount shortage. And I think one has to we have to remind ourselves that, talent it's not something we buy. It is something we build. And so looking at it more holistically and understanding that a talent constraint or a talent crunch needs to be much more about focusing on capabilities and the systems governing, a company or a position, meaning, different processes, culture, governance elements, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you very much. That kind of ties in already into the next question, which I have. Where is it hard to find the talent for various reasons? And where do we really have a constraint in talent? This is kind of the view from an executive searcher.
Got it. Okay. So I think it's definitely a challenge or hard to find talent in specific areas when we're looking at the CDMO sector or industry. And I think QA leadership is one of the challenging ones. We see the MSAT tech transfer profiles is also, we see the regulatory, really regulatory leadership roles is another challenging aspect. And then, of course, you have the whole digital arena and, finding the right profiles, which are in high demand at the moment. So I think those are certainly some of the hard roles to currently at least, and we do see strong constraint there.
Yeah, that's also exactly what I see on my plate very often. And let's dive a little bit deeper into this. What separates someone who is qualified from someone who is actually effective in QA leadership when it comes to scaling?
Yeah, I
Not
think
only scaling, I would say in general. This
yeah,
can be put more general.
I think what really is the differentiator here is that companies are looking for QA leaders who can understand the business, who has an understanding for what is behind the company's performance, that is able to translate, I think, the regulations, standards, operating procedures, and things like that into sort of more business enabling sort of risk decisions. Because really, QA is often is mainly about understanding the risks that are related to that could be a manufacturing batch, or it could be understanding any other sort of elements in the business, because QA obviously goes far and deep into the business. But if you have profiles that don't understand that and are able to translate these regulations and these guidelines and rules into business enablers based on, of course, a risk evaluation, then you have a challenge, because then QA has to be partners with the different stakeholders in their organization and offer solutions and trade-offs sometimes, of course. Because I mean, it is a business that they're part of, and of course they need to make sure that the risk is balanced well.
Mhm. Yeah, and very often, I mean, wrong decisions in QA have a domino effect, which can have, very severe effects on the whole organization and the output. What would you say? What do strong QA leaders do different in their week to week business? What really makes a QA leader?
I think a strong QA leader is also what makes a strong leader in general. It is about creating a very strong vision, clear strategy, some underlying, let's say, plans or tactical priorities, coupled up with some KPIs that are clear and impactable, if you can say that's a new word, I think. But that the employees are able to impact and can see that they can make a difference in relation to, and so there's the more general leadership element, going from the vision strategy down to execution and making everything clear and concise, and everyone knowing what are their contributions and what are the elements that they make a difference, and who should they collaborate with, and who are they dependent on. I think if we go more into the QA, you could say, area as such, I think there's also actually bringing the organization to understand that they're part of a business and that they have such a huge impact and huge responsibility for making sure that not only the business is going well, but also that patients are safe, right?
Yeah.
And it is this risk balance that they need to make sure is understood in the organization. But if you don't have if you have employees, if you have naysayers who just say this is what it says in the regulation and therefore nothing can be done, that's the kind of organization you're building. Then you're going to have challenges all the way around, all around, right? So you need to learn or teach the employees that find solutions, find ways, don't uh, don't let's say, not in fear of any patient safety. They need to be sure that safety is clear here, but there are always a lot of paths to follow, and they need to instill that in the organization to find solutions.
Yeah, very interesting. And very interesting, especially because sometimes QA people are not that kind of characters who see the very big picture. Very often they're more in their silo, in their quality silo, but they should focus much more on leadership and have to be aware of what their actions and can create towards the end of the value chain and towards the end customer.
Exactly, and I think if you get the right profile that understands all these, the role as just described before, Then I also believe it's super important that QA is really anchored at senior level, right? So they need to have the mandate, but they need to also have a clear point of reference that is not sort of tucked away in a way, but actually is very close to top management and maybe even are in top management. I have several clients where QA sits in the top management board, and yeah, exactly, and I can see how QA is being much more integrated into the overall business, and QA is able to impact different business decisions quicker and faster.
Mhm. Fantastic. And Henrik, do you have two interview questions which you would ask a QA person in order to figure out if it's that kind of manager with, a vision and with a or better broad vision, as you mentioned before?
Yeah, I think what I typically do is rather than asking a specific question is I try to sort of build a case that I sort of navigate together with the QA leader here in that we're processing for a position. And in that case, I'm really taking out two or three sub cases where I can sort of say, listen, here we have a situation, right? You have, for instance, your QA middle managers saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong in manufacturing. They're not doing it. They're out of spec all the time. Huge issues are continuously and gaps are continuously surfacing from manufacturing side. And manufacturing on the other side is saying, listen, this QA is totally impossible. She doesn't understand or he doesn't understand the business, that we're running a live manufacturing organization where, things are not just like on a linear path. And so depicting these kind of thought examples and how this QA leader would walk into that room and trying to make both parties find a path that will suffice in terms of making sure the risk is covered well and that we're not downgrading quality issues. We're also not overstating things that is maybe not necessary.
By the way, for the audience, on a side note, Henrik has kind of this framework of cases of case studies within the medtech industry, which he uses in his recruiting process, which is really amazing. And I hope that he'll share some of that information with me at one point. Henrik, before we move to the next position, could you finish one sentence? QA becomes a bottleneck when?
Yeah, so QA becomes a bottleneck if they are not solution oriented, if they're not trying to basically work together with their stakeholders and trying to understand what are the challenges that the stakeholders are having. That could be manufacturing, that could be commercial, whatever. If they're not interested in understanding what are the frameworks or the limitations and the opportunities running their part of the business, and how does that play into the company, and how does that play into QA? If they don't have that interest or willingness to understand and hence also eventually find solutions, then they become a bottleneck.
Mhm. Thank you very much. And let's move on to the second critical positions which we defined or which we mentioned earlier, the MSAT tech transfer roles. What, in your opinion, separates high velocity sites from slow ones when it comes to tech transfer? And we both know how important tech transfer is, especially in the CDMO industry.
Yeah, I think what differentiates the two is really that the much more effective one, MSAT, is embedded. The MSAT staff is embedded on the manufacturing floor. They are definitely embedded long before the first runs are being conducted. So it's again, I hate silos, right? So if you just think of yourself as a MSAT person who sort of has a very, you can say, closed system they work within, then that's an issue because you need to be very, very close to what you're supposed to be close to also, which is the manufacturing floor. and making sure that before we run the first run, so to speak, then we have the MSAT people close on the floor.
Yeah. And where do you think does it usually break first? In process characterization, documentation discipline, change of control, or within the alignment with quality?
That's a good question. I think I would actually say change of control, because
Yeah.
the role of the MSAT is also to sort of ensure that whatever has been developed in R&D can be sort of reliably run in a sort of scale up manufacturing scale solution, right? And often you would see in that very, this is a complex process that takes a lot of time and has a lot of steps into it. And here you will be conducting several change controls along the way. And if you don't have a strong overview and collaboration between MSAT, manufacturing, and even QA as well, and others, then you're going to have a huge challenge.
Okay. And how do you speed up the transfer without increasing deviations? Do you have a secret sauce for that, or have you seen the secret sauce for that?
To be honest, no. I mean, again, I'm not an MSAT educated person, but we do, of course, a lot of activities around the area, as well as the manufacturing and other places in the operations cycle and R&D as well. But no, I can't say there's a secret sauce. But I think it's back to being close to the people who are part of the process that you need to make sure goes smooth and is in control, right? If you're not close to them, that's both people in your own sort of area or department, but it's also the key stakeholders like in manufacturing or other places. You have to be close to the people.
And do you have a real example? What did break? What did it cost, and what ultimately fixed it? I know it's very hard to quantify, but
Yeah.
probably
No,
you've seen something.
yeah, I think I've seen, when products went into manufacturing scale and they were sort of going into the first run, and everything collapsed. And it's not MSAT's fault, but sometimes it is in the process or in the ability to make that tech transfer from R&D to manufacturing scale and make sure you have all the documentation, make sure you have involved the right people in the processes, make sure that of course you've done your proper sort of professional scope of that process, right? If that's not the case, I've seen horrible situations where basically the first runs were just completely. I mean, it was like almost back to the drawing table, and that's a horrible situation. And then we come into the audit situation later, which is also something that is impacting things eventually.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with us. Let's move on to market and regulatory context, audits, transparency, and trust. How have customer expectations and audience changed the leadership profile CDMOs need today?
Yeah, I think the honest answer is I think that audits are no longer sort of episodical or on episode, right? It's really a continuous process. And some of the best regulatory and also QA teams that I've seen working when we work in the audit element is thinking of audits as a continuous process. And that means that they are ensuring audit readiness continuously, and they're building audit readiness into everything they do. And therefore, when all these audits come, and some of the clients I've had, they've had so many people wanting to audit them, partners, of course, authorities, etc., that if they didn't have a very well-defined process, if everyone didn't have their roles clear understood, and every sort of initiative was made to be ready quite quickly, the organization would be dead. And if they don't have that continuousness understanding as well, I've also seen how companies have gotten all the way to warning letters because they simply were not in control of the audit.
Yeah. But this, continuous audit, as you call it, has a
Yeah.
lot of implications also on the leadership. And what implication does that have for a site leader? Because I hired many site leaders so far, and I saw that there were very different understandings of audits and how to handle that. What's your take on that one?
Yeah, so if you're asking, more on what makes a good leader in that context, if it's correctly understood, I think.
The site leader really is the top
Oh,
down
so
in
not
this.
not the okay, so
Yeah.
the full site leader. Well, I think the full site leader needs to see QA, RA, and all the different specialty functions as important players and in players that can enable the company, enable manufacturing, enable commercial or whatever. So rather than seeing them as limitations, they should see them as enablers. And then they need to take a hard look at their organizations in the QA, RA, MSAT, etc., and see, is it the case that these people are also enablers, that they see their role as understanding they are really, sort of risk management people, and they need to understand the business as well. So I think a great site leader has an organization that understands that they're all enablers of being able to eventually get a product to the patients.
Mm. And it's really like it's part of the culture, right? It's not just a leadership style, but it should be part of a culture within an organization, which the site leader should implement top down. So it's not just some fluff stuff which is being put away and sometimes even locked away, and but it should be an integral part of the day-to-day business and being implemented accordingly.
Yeah, fully agree.
Yeah, yeah. Great. Henrik, let's move on to the retention and onboarding, the famous 90 days.
Yeah, yeah.
Which roles in this context are the most sensitive to poor onboarding or early churn? What do you observe?
Terms.
Actually, for me to if I could take that up front, it's quality. I noticed that lots of quality people don't make it through the first 90 days, but
Yeah.
that might just be my impression.
Yeah, I think the first 90 days are really important. And if you don't, as let's say you're changing job, you're a QA leader, and you're changing now to a new company in the life sciences space, if you don't work with your onboarding process very structured, then you're probably not going to succeed, or at least will be challenged in that. And for me, it has 3 steps, really. There is the phase where we as headhunters are approaching the candidate, we're talking, we're getting deep into the dialogue, they're starting to meet our client, etc. Here, it's super important that we make sure that the candidate does his or her due diligence. And when I mean due diligence, and this is the due diligence part before they actually sign the contract, right? So it is about understanding what are the role risks of this opportunity. So what are my concerns? Is there a mandate? Do I have decision-making authority in the position? Can I navigate as I should if I'm going to succeed in this, right? There's the organizational risks. What company is this? What is the situation in terms of, are they successful working with their customers? What is the competitive landscape? And what is the framework? They need to do their due diligence and find out, are there any organizational risks I should be aware of? And then they need to also look at the personal risks. So like, is this a new culture I'm going into? Is it a new geography? And hence, I'm going to have a higher transition complexity because I'm going into a whole new country with a whole different culture, even a company which is very different in culture. So I think, you need to do your due diligence before you sign the contract. Then when you've signed the contract, and this amounts for everyone, you need to do as much work as you can do in gaining insights and information about the company. You may even want to meet a few stakeholders in the team before you actually start. That's the kind of limbo period, right? And then the final period is when you're there, right? So you need to think about, what am I going to do the first day? How am I going to communicate? You can fall flat on your face the first day like that if you do, communicate in a stupid way, right? And then it's about, dividing the 90 days up in 3 blocks, I think. So the first 30 days is all about learning. Nobody's going to push you to make any kind of decision. It's about learning. It's about diagnosing the situation of the company. And then, when you get to the 31 to 60 days, so to speak, then it's about sort of building some momentum. Now you've diagnosed the company. Now you need to sort of create some momentum in the different parts of the organization. You need to take the early wins as well, right? So there are quick wins that can really build your credibility, right? And then finally, at the last 90 days, or so, because it's not carved in stone that it's exactly 90, and sometimes it's 100 days. It's about putting that organizational structure in place, right? Now you've got your full diagnose, you've built some momentum, you've understood the business. Now you need to recalibrate on the organization and create that new organizational structure. And if you're not very methodical in that approach, the risk of you not succeeding, whether you're QA head or something else, it's quite high.
Yeah. But I also see that we have some responsibility here as well in the as headhunters or executive searchers, especially the due diligence phase, which you described earlier. I think it's, or I see it as our task or our responsibility to guide the candidate through that. And of course, we can't take away the due diligence process from the candidate, but at least we can guide the candidate to do it and to do it really thoroughly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think I wrote a book about executive onboarding, and
yeah.
it's actually a book which is a toolbox as well included. And I always give that book and toolbox to the candidate, giving them the opportunity to sort of navigate and prepare themselves. But already from the first second I reach out to a candidate, I start talking about onboarding. I start talking about due diligence. And you're right, we have to help them and we have to do some of the work, but it's absolutely it's a really, I don't know what I would call it. It's for me a no-go if I have a candidate that basically only relies on us to supply them with the information. We will
Absolutely.
big part of the job, but we cannot do all the job. They need to also reflect on themselves, right? All the stuff. It's like your highest window. There's something we still can't see that they can see, or that they don't even see, that even we can't see either. So you need to sort of push the candidates to do their own due diligence as well.
Yeah. And probably, and I'm sure you do that. You should also give that book to your clients, to the client companies,
Yeah.
to the hiring
Yeah.
managers, because my feeling is that sometimes the hiring managers, and they're not even aware of it, miss some crucial parts within the onboarding process. They just things which are normal for them. They forget that it's completely new situation for the new hire, and so they don't see that very often. So they should also be very sensitive about the onboarding, and also very sensitive about the feeling of the candidates and the new hires.
I think you're absolutely right. It's spot on what you're saying. And I think one of the worst things about this is that for some reason, the more senior the profile that is being onboarded into a company, the less help the person gets.
Yeah.
And therefore, and it's high impact positions that can also mean make or break for the company. And these people are getting, very modest support compared to the impact that they can instill in the company.
Thank you very much for your obviously deep knowledge in this area, and sharing that with us. Let's have a little bit of a future outlook, when it comes to digital automation and also data integration, um, in order to avoid the so-called digital theater. What do you think? What capability gap will hurt CDMOs most in the next 18 to 36 months? We can also rephrase it. Or what are the
Yeah.
the biggest chances which CDMOs have if they foresee this coming?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is if there's a weak MSAT and quality integration. So if people are not co-owning decisions, which they're an important part of, I think that's a critical area. And then I think um, it's understanding how to implement digital workflows, AI, etc., into that workflow. Understanding how you work the tools in and make your processes more effective. I think if you don't understand that, then you're going to be challenged for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, could you finish the sentence? If data integrity is weak, then
Then you're in trouble. I think I don't know if I would actually end the sentence there because then you've got an area of priority that you need to look into.
absolutely, absolutely. And it also shows data integrity is a mission critical part for each organization. And I think this doesn't only employ or apply to CDMOs. It's
Yeah,
unique.
very true.
Great. Let's do kind of a lightning round here. So I'd like to ask you 3 rapid fire questions. Which senior hire would you prioritize this quarter if you would have many openings, if you could choose one? Which would you
Oh,
suggest?
okay. So I would have a lot of openings here, and there's a really priority to hire. Um,
Because it's most mission critical towards an
yeah, I
organization.
was gonna say, the most important positions are the ones that I call, yeah, you call them mission critical, I call them business critical, right? So, and they can be anybody. They could be the top manager or the top executive, but they could also be a highly specialized profile that makes a huge difference for the company and is hence business critical. I would take a long, hard look at and again, it's not about headcount, it's about capabilities and understanding what capabilities do we need and which capabilities are critical for the business. And those would be the ones I prioritize.
Mhm. Thank you very much. And one interview question every CDMO should use for each position.
Yeah, again, I would go back to sort of being a little bit competency based and also maybe slightly case based. But I would say, for instance, I would put them in a situation where I would ask, the first time you had to make a fast, risk based decision in a GMP environment, as we're often in here with the CDMOs, and you had incomplete data. So you have incomplete data, but you have to move fast now. That's the requirement, and it has to be a fast, risk-based decision. What would you do? How would you structure it? How would go about it? I think that would be a key.
Okay. And if you could look into the crystal ball, one prediction for the next 12 to 18 months in terms of hiring situation within the CDMO sector.
Yeah, I think the trend I'm seeing is that the clients of the CDMOs, they want fewer partners, and they want more transparency. They want a closer knit. Supply chain is obviously a huge issue for them and has been since COVID, right? So on the one sense, they need to make sure that the risk is covered in a sense. On the other hand, they need to go deep and get partners close to them that really understands their need and sort of can partner up on the processes. So, transparency, fewer partners, of course, a strong MSAT and QA integration is also, and so that's happening right now, and that will reflect the hires, right? So you need people on the CDMOs that can go deeper and closer to the client, uh, and are willing to do that and can create a safe place for both the CDMO and the client.
Yeah. And I think this holistic view which you just gave us, it's perfect closure already for our session here. Um, It was very great to have you here on the show, Henrik, and I'm looking forward to meeting you the next time and working with you on the next project together. Thank you very much for being here. I don't know if I mentioned that at the beginning of the talk. Henrik is based out of Copenhagen, and I think that's where you are right now, right?
Correct.
Because
So yeah,
I'm asking because I know that you're traveling a lot. So
yeah. So no, I'm based out of Copenhagen, and I'm in Copenhagen right now. We're having a snowstorm right now, so this is quite crazy. We're flat as a pancake, so we're not used to using the snow for very much, but it's certainly here. But yeah, it's been great, Carsten, also, and thanks a lot for a good talk here. And I know you've done yourself so much work in the CDMO space over many years now, and it's been great to sort of also capitalize on all your experience over the years here. So thank you so much.